And good morning and welcome to WYO Today Newsroom. I am joined here with the U.S. Marine Corps. We are glad to have you back. We've got special guests today, in addition to Staff Sergeant, Sergeant or Staff Sergeant?
Staff Sergeant.
Okay,
Actually, just
Staff
got promoted
Sergeant
last month.
Stover. Congratulations on that. We haven't seen you since then. We're
Appreciate
joined
it.
by an old friendly face in Staff Sergeant Martin as well.
It's good to be back.
Gotten a fresh haircut. I'm not. It's just throwing me a little bit. And we are joined by the highest rank I think we've had in this room. Actually,
Now we've had a major.
have we had a major?
We've had a major.
Captain Unruh. Captain, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you from? What's your current position? Obviously, having to deal with these two knuckleheads.
Hey, it's a pleasure being here, and thanks for the invite. Originally, I'm from northern Colorado, small town, now made a little larger as everyone's coming to Colorado. Small town of Erie. Went to school at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, got a degree in global security and intelligence, and then after a little stint at Raytheon, I commissioned as a Marine Corps officer. My career before coming out here to recruiting has been an intel officer. I know intel and Marine Corps can be a bit of an oxymoron. I can say I've been blessed, privileged in working with some of the brightest, the best Marines. And it's been an awesome, awesome career. And now over the last 7 months, 7 or 8, I've been the officer selection officer. So my job is to find, identify, and ultimately select the next generation of commissioned Marine Corps officers.
All right, and like we did with Staff Sergeant Martin, we did it with Staff Sergeant Stover. Ask them a little bit about their backgrounds first, because that's a cool little title, intelligence, especially for people who watch some TV and stuff. They may have a skewed view that it's more exciting than it is, or maybe a skewed view that it's less exciting than it is.
That's absolutely accurate.
I know there's a lot of things you probably can't talk about from your career, so we're gonna kind of give you open floor. Tell us a little bit about Marine intelligence.
Yeah, Marine intelligence, we've got 5 different Marine Corps officer jobs. An O202, which is effectively your jack of all trades, your all-source intel officer. You have an O203, which is a ground intelligence officer. Their job is to help decision makers, largely of the infantry type, to understand what's going on the dirt, orient onto an enemy, work through that close area, and ultimately bring Marines home. I'm an O204, which is a counterintelligence, human intelligence officer, equal parts counterintelligence agent, and then human source operator. And we have O206s, which are signals intelligence officers, the real nerd types, with all the bleeps and bloops. And then an O207, which is air intel officer. And our job is to protect and find adversary threats for our exquisite capabilities like the F-35, F-18s, and all of our other aerial platforms.
Okay. Staff Sergeant Martin, it's weird I'm calling you all by rank now. Usually it's just Martin Stover. But it's Staff Sergeant Stover, of course. We've talked before about, this isn't, while you do have goals and quotas, if you will, you're going for you're looking for a specific type of person. You're that next level officer selection, you said.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about that. What are you looking for that differentiates a normal poolee or recruit or whatever have you to be somebody you want to take an interest in?
Yeah, so my formal title is Officer Selection Officer. We don't call ourselves officer recruiters because we are very selective, taking the best of the best. And we look for those that are highly academically qualified. You have to have an SAT of over 1,000, ACT over a 22, or a very competitive ASVAB score. You need to be a full-time college student with over a 2.0 GPA and carrying at least 12 credits. And you need to be incredibly physically fit. So your 3-mile run's got to be less than 24 minutes. Perfect score, 18. You have to have more than 12 pull-ups. Perfect is over 20. And then max plank of 3 minutes and 45 seconds. All of those things together, and then we also add in a little bit of the qualitative values of, would you be a good leader? And that's where I come in as the selection officer to see if you are a good fit. Can you lead? If given orders, can you then give that to your peers and have them execute an operation or a mission? Are you a self-starter? resilient, disciplined, all before you are sent to officer training. And we do a similar thing. We don't call it boot camp. We call it officer candidate school, but the same principles apply. You're going to work and operate off of the third person. You're going to understand what it is, that incredibly challenging metric of discipline that the Marine Corps creates in every single Marine. And then on top of that, you're going to be evaluated on how well you can lead in doing those, operating within the human dimension of inspiring, motivating, putting people in the right place, the right time.
There's a lot of, and I know it's a myth, but you can go ahead and confirm it as far as a myth here, that officers only come from, like in the Army, they only come from West Point. In the Marines and Navy, they only come from Annapolis. You have to go to the United States Naval Academy if you want to be an officer. Is that true or not?
It's not true, and that's why I'm here. Actually, the preponderance of about 85% of Marine Corps officers are created through an officer selection officer. Our job is similar to an ROTC, but not exactly the same thing. So you have Naval Academy. That makes about 15% of Marine Corps officers. Then you've got NROTC, or the Naval ROTC program. That makes about 10. And the rest are through us, through OSOs throughout the country that are integrated with college campuses and having creating, either if you're from your freshman year to sophomore, junior, senior, or college grad, a way in which you can begin tackling the basic training requirements for Marine Corps officers. So that's my job. That's what we do, is we take current college students, college graduates, and help them commission, be appointed to that federal office to go lead Marines in the future.
And versus those three avenues, obviously, let's eliminate Naval Academy because they are extremely selective, just like West Point is and stuff like that. And the kids who are going through that kind of have to have their ducks in a row pretty early on. Is there an advantage to going through an ROTC program, whether it's high school or college? You mentioned college graduates, so I'm guessing you're looking for college graduates.
College grads and current college students.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is there an advantage of them going through ROTC?
Yes and no. ROTC, especially if you're going to go in through, like, start while you're a high schooler and begin with the NROTC scholarship, that's awesome. We love that. But we are that in between in which you keep your current college schedule the same. We are largely passive throughout your college semesters and during your college classes. We'll have PT to make sure you're physically fit. We'll have classes to make sure you're academically prepared to be good at OCS. But your only required part is the summer classes, or really summer OCS. So if you're a freshman, that's 2 6-week courses. Same thing for sophomores. And then if you're a junior in college, that's a 10-week summer OCS between your junior and senior year. And at that point, you're fully trained and you're ready to become a commissioned Marine Corps officer once you have your bachelor's degree. So there are positives of ROTC, but we offer something where you keep your current college schedule the exact same. We come in as more of a passive element until the summer, and then get you trained the same as an ROTC would.
Okay. One of the things that we've learned from both Staff Sergeant Martin and Staff Sergeant Stover that I always found so interesting was, everybody, when you're growing up, you see the Marines as X, and it's mainly what you see on TV. You see them as the grunts. You see them as the anti-tank missile gunners. You don't see them as the percentages they shared of people who are actually, quote-unquote, armed and in the field, and so there's so much more support. What are some of the typical type career paths someone can take if they're interested and they impress you and they're going into the officer corps? What are some of the more common options of pathways they take?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I always
have them occasionally.
I always say, if it exists in the civilian world, it exists in the Marine Corps. The only caveat is, if you go in as a Marine Corps officer, you go in as upper management. You go in immediately as a leader. Your job is to take a contingent of 6 to 200 Marines and go through life with them, lead them, train them, make them mission capable and incredibly effective. Now, some of those job fields, really from your Napoleonic numbering system, is how the Marine Corps breaks everything out. Your O1 is your admin, like human resources, or an office manager. Great admin folks make sure you're paid on time, that your travel is effectively reimbursed and booked, your awards and everything else like that. O2 is intelligence. We already went through a lot of those. O3 for us, that's the grunts, right? That's what the posters display as your infantry officers. We have light armored reconnaissance officers as well, and a whole lot of other things within that combat arms. We have logistics. So if you think supply chain management, if you want to find your way up to the boardroom there in Amazon, by all means, logistics officers are all over that one. And then even communications, working in a lot of the electronics and everything. If it exists in the greater civilian market, exists here. Even radio broadcaster, right? We have Comstrat Marines. I think you had Corporal Dimachowski on here a handful of months back. There's officer equivalents of that as well. Mm-hmm. So if you want to check off a lot of boxes, either add to the resume or we can be your resume. It's a great way to do it here, do it professionally.
So, question for you all, but more about officers, because you see it on TV, and God knows I heard it from my dad when he was still alive, when he talked about the guy showing up from Minneapolis. Guy shows up 22, 23, 24, officer. Dad been in country like 8 years. So, how do y'all work with them, not only to get the respect, but to also realize that they may not know everything about where they're at, especially in combat type situations. They're going in kind of blind, and, you know, the natural thing for any fresh new leader to do is to kind of want to I've got to get the respect, but now you're dealing with the fact that you haven't been there, and you've got guys thoroughly trained and fairly knowledgeable about the terrain and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, so first things first, I've been a platoon sergeant a handful of times, and as a platoon sergeant, especially in the infantry, you're given a brand new lieutenant straight from infantry officers course, who's probably 3-4 years younger than you, probably hasn't been in the Marine Corps more than a couple of years at most. And the biggest piece of advice I can always give is twofold. First of all, be humble. Like, know what you don't know. Second of all, understand your realm. Like, you're not one of the guys. You're not gonna be the guy that's up on the maintenance line, like, teaching the corporal how to turn a wrench and how to maintain his LAV. That's not your job. You shouldn't be there in the first place. Especially in the infantry, your job is like at managing and accepting risk realistically. Mm-hmm. You take the order from the higher ups, from the ether out there, wherever said order came down from. And you take this mission that's assigned, and your job is to figure out, how do I accomplish this mission with the least amount of casualties, and is this objective worth it? Mm-hmm. And you can accept that risk. That's why, as a squad leader, I'm not able to accept risk. It's not part of my realm. When I create a fragmentary order for an operation, I don't accept my own risk. The platoon commander gives me that risk because that's what he's trained to do. That's his realm. That's his job. And that's kind of my biggest piece of advice to newer officers that I've had, when, because that's oftentimes what a sergeant or staff sergeant does in the Marine Corps, is mentor junior officers. And it's arguably one of the most important parts of the non-commissioned and staff non-commissioned officers that are in the Marine Corps.
And as you explain that risk management stuff, go a little further in depth, because one of the things that, I watch a lot of military type podcasts and stuff with former special forces, stuff like that. They say one of the things that really sets the U.S. military as a whole apart is that when orders come down, they're not extreme detail. It's not like, you're going to take this hill, here's how you're going to do it, here's what you're going to use. It's basically take the hill, and then further down the line, you start to figure out. There's a scene in Private Ryan that everybody references where they're kind of like trying to figure it out, but they're the boots on the ground. So it's their job to kind of figure out how to accomplish the overall goal. They've not been told how to do it, because obviously when bullets are flying, things change quickly and things have to be fluid. Talk a little bit more about how that comes into play, but also how you kind of teach that kind of philosophy.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So we do not operate under like the type of order or operation where, let's say Captain Unruh is my company commander, my platoon commander. He's not giving me, hey, you're going to go march 100 meters up this hill, dig in right there, and, orient your weapons this direction. He's going to say, hey, I need this hill secured. Mm-hmm. And then it's my job to go figure out how I'm going to do that. And that's kind of the biggest role there is, what do we need to accomplish? What is the end state that the commander wants to see? Once the commander gives me, as a platoon sergeant or a squad leader, an end state, I'll go figure out how to do it. That's the employment and the tactical level of the operation. The officer manages what objectives do we need to take? Why do these objectives matter? Is securing this hill at an estimated 20% casualty rate worth it? Do I need to do that? Is there a better option? Mm-hmm. Maybe I don't secure that hill and we maneuver through somewhere else and we don't have to risk those casualties securing that hill. What's the end state? What's the goal that we want to accomplish?
Yeah, there are orders, and the way in which we execute operations is mission-based and mission-type orders, where we break down that mission with your 5 W's, your who, what, where, when, and why. And the most important is that why.
Never heard that before. In the journalism world.
That why you're in order to, your end state and your intent is truly the most important part. If you're given the task of you have to stop the enemy from advancing on the friendly position, and your goal right now is to channel them at this bridge, because that's ultimately how they have to come this way. But the large enemy force, and maybe the risk isn't worth it to friendly lives. We can change that on the fly, because our in order to is just to stop that advance, not simply to hold the bridge. Mm-hmm. So you follow that bridge and you step back. And you watch them sit on the other ridge line.
I think people find that very interesting, that so much of the decision making as far as to accomplish an objective is down the line. Mm-hmm. So that said, when you're looking for officers, when you're out in the field, you can talk, Stover.
Yeah, I'm just. They've been explaining it very well. I have nothing really to add.
When you get to that point, obviously you can be as selective as you want to be. You can you can pick out the best candidate you want to. When bullets start to fly, things start to change, and especially the first time anybody's getting fired at or whatnot, is probably some fear and whatnot. How do y'all, in advance of that, how does the United States Marine Corps train them to be able to kind of, for lack of a better word, separate themselves from the situation to make that decision when there's 8 different options? You've got to make one right now because bullets are flying. But the natural human instinct is to panic and become very indecisive very quickly.
Well, that's an outstanding question. First, training. Training is huge, both on the leadership side. I know the officer side, they end up getting a lot of formal training kind of throughout their career than the enlisted side really does. But as Staff Sergeant Martin and I have progressed through our careers, we end up doing things called professional military education. First starting out at Lance Corporal Seminar, then to Corporal's course, and then the Sergeant School. Sergeant School is kind of where you see where that in-depth training for that sergeant kind of is there, that decision making, that quick decision making on the fly. We call them SULEs, or small unit leadership evaluations. So that's kind of where we start seeing that quick decision making, and you have to put Marines in that situation. So whenever that situation does arise, they have the training to fall back on. Because when bullets start flying, you're going to immediately revert to the highest level of training that you have. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I think that's good for the people to hear, because, when you see most people's access to the military is either through a distant relative, or in my case, my father, it wasn't a distant relative, or getting to know guys like you. A lot of people's exposure is what they see on TV, what they see in movies. So the guys on the front lines, they're called grunts, and they're not necessarily portrayed as the best and the brightest. They're usually, they had to do this because they didn't have good That's not the case. You've got to be extremely intelligent to make those decisions, because some of those decisions, anytime you're making anything on the fly, and especially under threat of death, you're going to make a wrong decision, and how do you get back on path?
Yeah, that's right.
Is that something the Marines help with, or is that something that you guys as recruiters find, yeah, it is, but it's kind of innate, or is it fully just innate? Some people are born with it, some people aren't.
Yeah, so I mean, the entire, both on the enlisted and the officer side, recruit training process is built to push those limits and test those limits specifically for that reason. Like, we could train somebody to go conduct close order drill and teach somebody about all the Marine Corps history and all this other stuff that you do at recruit training without all the yelling and screaming. You 100% could. But the point isn't to just know these things. The point is to be able to understand them when the stress is high. So that's step one, right? Is introducing stress into the situation, into the training environment. And then step two is kind of what we were talking about earlier, the delegation, right? Captain Unruh here would never be able to come up with an entire 5-paragraph order in 30 minutes while we're getting shot at. He would come up with, hey, we need to go secure that tree line because that's where we're probably going to get attacked from. And then he says, all right, Sergeant Martin, Corporal D. Machowski, whoever the squad leaders are, I need you guys to go do this, this, and this so we can secure that tree line. Then we'll go kind of figure out a little bit more as we go along. I'll go, okay, well, I need to maneuver in this direction, so on and so forth. A saying that we use in the Marine Corps is 80% of a plan violently executed now is better than a complete plan executed tomorrow.
That's right.
Okay, that's kind of a bad quote. That's kind of, I may steal that. So we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about, and not the politics or anything about that, but we've just U.S. involved in more of probably a traditional conflict, and we say traditional, although it's been like 80% drones, which is still kind of weird to a lot of people. So not as traditional as it used to be, but more of a traditional conflict than we've seen in quite some time. The Venezuela thing was kind of well, you kind of knew it would be because they've so inflated their currency that it would be not too overly difficult. But with this thing with Iran, a little more traditional than like the War on Terror, where it was Al Qaeda and different groups. This is country on country, so to speak. Have you guys, what does the mindset when, I don't know, for some of you, this may be the first time we've gone a country on country in your career, really, depending on age. Does the mental aspect of recruiting change? Have you seen any more? I know it's real early, but have you seen more people kind of at least reaching out, like on the website or via email, going kind of with interest? Have you seen less because now it's real, I could be shot at, kind of thing. It's a little more real than, the old excuse of, I just was here to get my college GI Bill. So have you all seen any of that, or is it just for you guys just kind of say mission as mission is?
So I'm sure for the other branches, they've seen some of it, but as I think you and I have talked about before, the Marine Corps doesn't really get affected by things like that. Marine Corps recruiting never really gets affected, even by things like COVID. We never really were affected by those things. It was just another excuse that people who already weren't going to do it use. So sometimes it's, politics. I don't like XYZ about whatever. Okay, and then XYZ changes, and then you call them back. Oh, well, now I don't like this. It's just another excuse. So for us, we'll never... I don't think we'll ever be affected truly by those things, because the people that want to become Marines, that have this drive to earn the title United States Marine, are never worried. They're never the ones that are worried about all this other stuff. And
I've heard that, especially with Marines, through you, McKeon, Stover a little bit. I do know that the one time that all 4 branches saw a surge in interest was 9/11. Yeah. That's a little different because we were attacked, and that always drives people, whether it's Pearl Harbor or this, and this is a little bit more of a foreign war. So interesting. And how is it for you guys nowadays talking about the questions of, I said it's, and they're billing it as a more conventional country on country. But, it's some kid in Nebraska on like an Xbox controller controlling a drone 5,000 miles away and able to hit a guy smoking a cigarette on his balcony, and take a picture of him while he does it. How, in y'all's short career, how has technology changed the recruiting as far as, it's a lot more technical, and it's got to be demoralizing as an enemy if you can literally target a guy. Was it Afghanistan or was it Iran just recently? We targeted a guy. We didn't want to kill anybody else in the room, so they sent in a missile without a warhead.
Yeah.
And just went straight through his body. The fact that you can target him smoking a cigarette on his balcony of his apartment and be that accurate, it's got to be just intimidating, but also has to require some sort of the nerds of old, like when I was in school, are now, flying drones and able to kill the enemy.
That's right.
Yeah, we've had a lot of changes over the last, more recently 5 years, but realistically since the early 2000s. I think we've talked about Force Design 2030 a few times on the show, and like the concept of expeditionary advanced base operations. What Captain Unruh does with the intelligence side is much more involved in every day-to-day operations. And lots of things have changed. Technology's grown. We're more decentralized than we've ever been, which means that, as a sergeant or staff sergeant or even a corporal, you could be the highest ranking guy for 50 kilometers on an island somewhere out there. So the expectation of who we put into leadership positions, who we bring into our Marine Corps, and then the training process the entire time has to be 100%. You can't have a weak link when you operate as decentralized and as far away from each other as we do. My air support might be some guy sitting in a bunker in Nebraska flying a drone instead of a pilot that's actually overhead.
Well, it's interesting to me because as you watch these documentaries and stuff, the kid who was portrayed, I was like, oh, he's a gamer. He's going to be a little engineer. He could be military. And now they're being recruited by like the Air Force because they have that hand-eye coordination. They have that, things that come from that kind of background. And like I said, they're able to hit a guy just using basically what looks like an Xbox controller. It literally looks just like it. It's just amazing how things have progressed. And did it just progress that way, or did the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines see that, okay, this is where kids are going? How do we tap into that? And from a recruiting standpoint, it's got to make some mamas happy, the fact that they could be sitting in Nebraska flying that. And if the drone gets knocked down, well, what's another $1 billion? My baby's sitting in Chicago or Nebraska or wherever have you. Has that led to more, like, I hate to say it's always moms because dads can be nervous too. I know I would be. Nervous parents being like, well, if they're going that kind of direction, that they're not going to, come back in a body bag. I hate to say it that way, but, that's always going to be a mom or a dad's concern to some extent.
Yeah.
Of course.
I would say yes and no, right? At the end of the day, in the Marine Corps, every Marine is always a rifleman.
Yes.
So there's always some sort of expectation that, like, hey, you're not the first guy to go. You might not even be the 10th, but you might.
You could be.
You need to know how to pick up a rifle and go do some work with it. So, like, yes, there is a lot of more security and a little bit of parents feeling a little bit better about their babies going off to join the military. But it's also something that we as recruiters, I think, very much need to make sure the people and the families of the people that we're enlisting understand that, like, hey, you're not, yes, there's a lower chance because of all of this, but there's still a chance. It still exists. You're still a Marine. You're still going to be.
And I think that's probably every branch to a certain extent. We have been lucky, or not lucky, but highly skilled, highly trained, whatnot, that our militaries usually 95% of the time can't be matched. Usually even in situations like a Vietnam or something, it's more the politics side of it than it was our own forces. But in any branch, at some point in time, if we ran into a stronger, better force that we're struggling about, anybody could go. Whether you're in the Navy and you're in the chow line, if your number gets called, you get aboard that ship. If you're in the Army, anything like that. I mean, because first and foremost, you are a soldier.
Yeah.
So we're running out of time. But let's talk about a few fun things. One is, what have you two got going on? Where y'all going to be? I do hear Well, I heard from you, but I was trying to play it up for the radio people. I do hear that your pig wrestling team is complete.
Yeah.
So give us the lineup, because you gave us one last year, or Stover did. One of y'all did, and like half of it was right.
Yeah. So this year we've got the full lineup set up. Plans are already being made for funding to get everyone up here. Again, it's going to be myself, Staff Sergeant Stover on the team again. Get a little bit of experience in there. And then we're going to be bringing Staff Sergeant Miller from the recruiting substation Metro North. He's the substation commander down there. He's a pretty built guy.
Diesel.
Yeah. Diesel.
Yeah, he that's an understatement.
Looks like a Mack truck.
Yeah, he's a pretty strong guy.
I just want, if he happens to ever hear this, I want him to know that he's being insulted by his fellow Marine. I have nothing to do with this. I have absolutely nothing to do with it. I'll make fun of you on the PA, but I have nothing to do with this.
Yeah. And then for our fourth teammate, we've got Gunnery Sergeant Saucedo. He's actually a career recruiter with
I've
our
met him, haven't I? Hasn't he been in town once?
No,
Before?
he didn't. He didn't come up when he was
supposed
supposed
to
to
come
last
up.
month.
Okay, 'cause I know the name.
Yeah. But no, he's very similarly built to Staff Sergeant Miller.
Well, and for when one of them drops out, you've always got, like Jameson Spradlin, you got some speed, because one of the things is you don't want to grip it too tight, as you learned.
Yeah.
Grip it too tight, that slipperiness comes into great play.
Yep.
But no, that is awesome. So where are you guys, what have you got coming up? Where are y'all going to be? And of course, where can people, I guess first, because you're here local, how can people, if someone's listening in or someone's listened in before and they're like, I've been thinking about it. Well, by just calling you or reaching out to you, they're not committing, right? They're just asking questions.
Absolutely.
So, and they're actually getting 100% accurate information, stuff like YouTube and Google and stuff like that. So how do they get in touch with you if there's someone here in Lander or Riverton or any of the surrounding area and they want to talk?
So the best way to get a hold of me is actually through my cell phone. It's 307-267-4980. And if you do happen to stop by the office here and I'm not there, my business card is right there on the window. Go ahead and shoot me a phone call. And if I don't answer, I'm probably busy. Shoot me a text, and I promise I'll give you a call back as soon as humanly possible. In the near future, actually, I'll be over at Shoshone High School. We're doing the big career fair there for those students. I'll be presenting to some of those students this Friday. So that's going to be a good time. And then I'm actually, right after this, I'm boogieing up to Warland.
Awesome. One of our broadcasters is actually going to be at that career fair. Actually, our Thermopolis guy for the Bobcats is going to be at that same career fair. So tell him hi. Now, we do, as Kurt mentioned on his show, we do actually we cover a lot of warthogs and moles and stuff like that through all the way up towards Montana. But we do carry all the way basically to the airport in Casper with two of our stations. This one this is on KDNO. So, yeah, it does keep forgetting to move from AM. So, if they're in Casper or the surrounding area, how do they get in touch with, anti-tank missile gunner and now Staff Sergeant Martin?
Yeah, so if you need to get a hold of me and you want to get some information, don't hesitate to reach out. Just because I'm not, a recruiter officially anymore, you can always still reach out to me. Both the recruiters work for me, and I'll get you in touch with the right person. But my phone number is 307-247-4256.
All right, and at some point in time, you got to come back on because we got to explore what you do now. We've kind of ran out of time, so Captain Unruh.
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah, it's
get it
been
right
my
the
whole
second
life.
time. Thank you for coming in, Staff Sergeant Martin, Staff Sergeant Stover. It's great to have you guys back, and we look forward to having you on here monthly. Any last words? Anybody want to say hi to? Anybody?
No, I appreciate you guys getting us back on, and then I know we had to take a break there for a little while, but we got things figured out.
Yeah, it's been a blessing, truly. Being a Marine and Marine Corps officer is the greatest professional decision of my life. If you want to step into this great brotherhood, this great organization, prove yourself, because we're going to challenge you. But if you feel like you're up for that challenge, reach out. Be it to myself, to the these Marines to my left and right. If you go to Marines.com, you plug in your information and you plug in your zip code, it will get to that requisite recruiter. Doesn't matter if you're here local, if you're out across the U.S., we can find a way to get you in contact with the right people.
All right. Well, we want to thank Staff Sergeant Stover, Staff Sergeant Martin, and Captain Unruh for joining us today. They are the few, they are the proud, they are the United States Marine. We'll see you next time on 101.7 KDNO.